The night was a total wash, gloomy and rainy, the kind of weather where the neon from the roadside signs bleeds across the wet asphalt in dismal, blurry patches. My wipers were lazily batting droplets across the windshield, and the radio was just mumbling some lo-fi filler to kill the silence. It was just another shift in my illustrious career as a rideshare driver. Nothing new. I'd only been driving in this city for a short time, but I'd already learned the drill. After 11 p.m., you're mostly just hauling drunks home from the bars. But on this particular night, orders were dead. I was about to call it a night and head home when my headlights caught a silhouette up ahead. Standing on the shoulder was a girl, a thin figure in a dark hoodie, the hood pulled low over her face. She raised her hand, flagging me down. I figured, what the hell? I'll take this one last fare and then finally hit the rack. The girl didn't look wasted. On the contrary, she looked lost and defenseless, standing all alone in the middle of a soaked road. The only weird thing was, why didn't she just ping a ride through the app? Anyway, I wasn't complaining. Cash is king, and this meant I'd keep the whole cut without any commissions. I slowed down and pulled up next to her, rolling down the window. She didn't lean in to talk like passengers usually do. She just opened the back door and slid inside without a word. Strange, but you see all kinds of freaks on the graveyard shift. I decided to break the awkwardness. "Good evening. Where are we heading?" I asked. She didn't rush to answer. She just shifted slightly on the seat. In the rearview mirror, her face was a total eclipse. The shadow of the hood was blocking everything. I was just about to repeat the question when a quiet voice spoke.
"To the old subdivision, please."
Her words gave me instant goosebumps. For a second, I just sat there, staring into the darkness. The old subdivision was a place called the Pines, and it was a local legend for all the wrong reasons. I'd moved here recently, but I'd already heard the rumors about that failed gated community. Back in the day, they were supposed to build these elite, spacious McMansions right on the edge of the forest. A dream home. The construction was almost finished, but a few months before the grand opening, the whole project went south. The investors vanished, the crews walked off, and the heavy machinery was left to rust right on the lots. People whispered that an entire work crew, 6 men, had disappeared on that site. The locals swore the workers were walled up inside one of the houses. Nobody ever found any remains, but people claimed that at night, you could hear voices and knocking coming from the walls of the abandoned houses. Whether it was true or just urban legend, the fact remained. The Pines was left to rot. Now, it was just a landmark for bored teenagers and thrill seekers. So, when she gave me that address, my first thought was, no way she has a vacation home out there. The second was, what the hell is she doing at a dead-end tract like that? "You sure?" I asked cautiously. "I mean, I thought that place was a ghost town." The girl turned her head slightly, and even though I couldn't see her face, I felt her eyes burning into the back of my head. It made my skin crawl, and I quickly looked away.
"Yes, I'm sure,"
she whispered, almost to herself.
"They're waiting for me. Will 200 do?"
I was floored. That was triple the usual fare. Plus, I'd been dry all night and hadn't made a dime. A bonus like that was hard to pass up, even if I had to drive back empty. I shrugged and nodded, putting the car in gear. But one thing kept gnawing at me. Why there? I tried to convince myself it was some kind of underground rave or a themed party in the ruins. Kids are into that creepy stuff these days. Maybe she was just a late guest? But honestly, that thought didn't settle my stomach. Sighing, I flicked on the blinker and pulled away, leaving the cozy glow of the city lights for the pitch-black back roads. In the rear view, her face stayed hidden in the shadows, and for a second, I really regretted not just driving past her. The drive should have taken about 30 minutes. The whole time I kept checking the mirror out of the corner of my eye. She sat there like a statue. I started feeling twitchy from the silence, so I tried to lighten the mood. "You headed to a party, some kind of pop-up event? Maybe I should join you?" She didn't even flinch. Come on, girl, give me a smile. Why so gloomy? A pretty girl like you. She shifted. She turned her head slightly and hissed.
Just drive, please.
I shut up and gripped the wheel. Silent passengers are one thing, but that sounded sharp, almost like a threat. In the mirror, her silhouette flashed again, and I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Her reflection looked blurry, smudged, like it was glitching or vibrating. I whipped my head around to look at her, but she looked perfectly normal. Sharp silhouette, damp hoodie. I turned back to the road, trying to convince myself it was just the rain on the glass. The further we got from the city, the more the road fell apart. The asphalt turned into a dirt track full of potholes. The forest closed in. Heavy, wet branches hanging over us like claws. It felt like we were driving through a tunnel of shadows. I reached out to crank the radio just to drown out the anxiety, but all I got was dead air and static. I clicked it off and stole one more glance at her. She had turned toward the window, and I finally caught her profile. A lone, flickering street lamp flashed across her face, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. The girl didn't have a left eye. In its place was a void, a dark, hollowed-out socket. My heart hammered against my ribs. I instinctively looked away, a wave of cold panic washing over me. Calm down, I told myself. Maybe it was an accident, or a birth defect. Don't be a jerk. But a voice in my head was screaming, "Get her out of the car and get back to the city now." Listen, my voice was shaking. The road's completely washed out up ahead. Maybe I can drop you here? You're almost there anyway. She didn't turn. She just said, flat and cold,
Keep driving.
A shiver ran down my spine. A few more agonizing minutes, and the trees opened up. The pines. I knew it the second I saw it. Abandoned luxury shells stood everywhere, with dead, empty windows and collapsing fences. Against the stormy sky, they looked like row after row of gray ghosts. The girl slowly raised her hand, pointing to one of the houses.
Right here.
I pulled over onto the weedy shoulder. The house she pointed to looked like it had been rotting since the dawn of time. The siding was peeling, the windows were gaping black holes, and the roof was sagging under the weight of moss and dead leaves. The trees leaned so low, it looked like they were trying to swallow the place whole. I stared at her as she took her time opening the door. Who could possibly be waiting for her here? Looking at that lopsided wreck, I knew the answer was nobody. She slipped out, closed the door, and leaned toward the window.
Wait for me.
No, that wasn't the deal.
Just a few minutes.
Then I need the cash up front. She gave me a long, haunting stare from under the hood. Then, she reached into her sweatshirt, pulled out a gold chain, and handed it to me. She said it was a deposit, then turned and walked away before I could get a word in. She headed straight for the house with a light, confident stride. Every step she took made my stomach turn. Something bad was coming. I knew it. She disappeared through the crooked front door. I kept the engine running and turned the car around just in case. I locked the doors. I'd heard stories about lure robberies, drivers being led into the middle of nowhere to get jumped. Were her friends waiting inside? I sat there, listening to the rain, staring into the dark. Something was wrong. Not just the house or the girl, but something deeper. The longer I sat there, the more the terror took hold. I was shaking. It was a primal fear, the kind that tells you to run or die. Something is wrong here. I can feel it in my bones. I need to leave. I looked at the clock. 10 minutes. If I left her, I was an asshole. But if I stayed, I looked at the house. No way I was going in there. My survival instinct was screaming. Screw this, I muttered. I was about to floor it when the engine suddenly died. I yanked the key, but there was nothing. No crank, no click. Total silence. It was like someone had snipped the wires. What the hell? I growled. I tried again and again, but the car was a brick. Reluctantly, I hopped out to check under the hood. The night air hit me like a wet blanket, and a thick, patchy fog was crawling across the grass. I popped the hood and flicked on my phone's flashlight, but the darkness seemed to soak up the light. I had no idea what was wrong with the engine. What am I even doing? I thought, staring at the motor. I slammed the hood shut and checked my phone. No service. Of course, I groaned. Not a single bar in this hellhole. I looked back at the house, and that's when it hit me. Not a single light had flickered inside. No flashlight, no phone screen, nothing. How was she moving around in there? It was pitch black. Suddenly, a scream ripped through the air, high-pitched, thin, and full of pure agony. My fear turned into a jolt of adrenaline. She was in trouble. I couldn't just leave her. I ran to the trunk, fumbled around, and grabbed the first heavy thing I could find, a tire iron, and charged toward the porch. The scream came again, louder. I burst through the front door, the wood groaning on its hinges. I took one step inside, and the floorboard creaked like a gunshot. I froze, breathing in the stale, moldy air. "Hey, are you okay? Where are you?" I called out. No answer, only my own echo. My flashlight beam danced over peeling wallpaper and thick cobwebs. Then, the light hit the wall. Dark, uneven stains. It looked like blood. Every nerve in my body told me to run, but I couldn't move. I heard a muffled groan from below. The basement. I didn't think. I rushed to the basement door, threw it open, and practically flew down the stairs. The steps were thick with dust. My head started to feel heavy, dizzy. I felt like I was going to pass out. The world around me started to warp. The walls began to change. The peeling paint became fresh and bright. The dust vanished. Suddenly, the basement smelled like sawdust and new construction. A long, heavy screech echoed. The sound of something massive being dragged across the floor. I stood frozen on the stairs. Footsteps were coming. A woman's sob turned into a groan, and then a deep, gruff male voice barked, "Shut up." A man appeared in the doorway, broad-shouldered, tall. He was dragging something. My heart stopped. It was her, the girl from my car. He was dragging her by her hair, ignoring her screams. "Hey, let her go!" I yelled, lunging at him. But my hand went right through his shoulder like he was made of smoke. I wasn't there. I was a ghost watching a memory. The girl fought back, but it was useless. He threw her onto the concrete floor. The man hit her hard. She screamed, covering her face, but that only made him more vicious. He grabbed the gold chain around her neck, the same one she gave me, and started to choke her. Then he pulled a knife. "Look at me! Look!" he roared. "You didn't even look at me when you got in the car. You didn't even look when I said you were beautiful. Well, you're gonna look now." He grabbed her chin, forcing her eyes open. The knife glinted. "Here's a lesson for you, so you never look down on guys like me again." And then, I saw it. The knife touched her face. Everything went into slow motion. He forced her eye open, and with sadistic precision, he carved it out. Her scream exploded in my head. I heard the sound of something wet hitting the floor. The man stepped on it, grinding it into the concrete. I wanted to scream. I wanted to puke, but I was paralyzed. He stood up, cold and indifferent, looking down at her as she bled out on the floor. "Nobody will find you here," he spat. He turned and walked back up the stairs. Silence returned, broken only by her ragged breathing. She lay there alone in the dark, dying. I felt a deathly cold rising in my chest. I couldn't take my eyes off her body. Suddenly, a voice whispered right in my ear.
It was raining that night, too. He was a driver. He offered me a lift. He didn't ask for much.
I spun around. She was standing an inch away from me. The hood, the missing eye, the black void. She had a ghastly smirk on her face. I'm not him, I stammered, backing away. I turned and bolted for the stairs. I hammered on the door, screaming, but it wouldn't budge. It was like it was part of the wall. Footsteps sounded behind me. Slow, heavy, confident. I was trapped. I wasn't locked in with a girl. I was locked in with a wraith that wanted revenge on anyone who looked like the man who took her life. "Please, I didn't do anything," I screamed. But her cold hand gripped my shoulder with fingers like steel. My strength drained away. Her cold breath burned my ear as she whispered the last thing I'd ever hear.
Nobody will find you here.
Late that night, another driver was cruising the highway. A young guy, tired, and ready for his shift to end. It was raining. The radio was low. Suddenly, a news bulletin broke through. Police are continuing the search for a missing rideshare driver whose vehicle was found abandoned near the Pines development. No signs of a struggle were found. This is the third disappearance in the area in 6 months. Motorists are advised not to stop for hitchhikers on this stretch of road. The driver snorted and turned it down. Man, these urban legends are getting wild. Just don't pick up sketchy people. Simple as that. Suddenly, his headlights caught a figure on the shoulder. A girl, wet, thin, with a hood pulled low. She raised her hand. The driver slowed down, squinting. He cracked the window and yelled, "Hey, gorgeous, don't get soaked. Hop in, I'll give you a lift." If you enjoyed the story, please support the channel. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.